Oh, hello, Mike.
Hello. How many people have done the Seinfeld thing? I have to ask. Does it come up once in a while?
On Zooms and Google Meets, I would say at least once a week.
Okay,
But
good.
on the pod, you might be the first. I love this.
God, I love it.
I love
Milestone.
the Seinfeld reference.
Yes.
Loved catching up with you before we started recording. It had been a very
Likewise.
long time since we had caught up. You had put up a fantastic LinkedIn post that resonated so well with everything we're building at OhHello.ai. And so we reconnected and started talking and just had a coffee together. I've had the pleasure of, we've each had the pleasure of knowing each other, seeing each other grow within our careers. Mike, why don't you tell our audience, who do I have the pleasure of speaking with? Who are you?
Who am I? Who am I really? So I'm Mike. I'm a Chicago kid. Yeah, I was born in Evanston. Grew up in the north suburbs, the John Hughes suburbs. You know, Home Alone and the Griswolds and all of that stuff.
Yep.
Went to school down in Carbondale, Illinois, a nice 5.5 hour, cornfield lined drive from Chicago to the bottom of the state. And then was an agency guy for many years in Chicago, mostly within Publicis Group. And then worked my way out west eventually in search of outdoor living and warm weather, and landed a role in tech at Netflix. And then I've spent the last dozen years or so within that space at companies like Google, Square, and now Life360. Family guy as well, 3 kids, a dog, 2 COVID bunnies. What more could somebody want?
And when we were catching up, when you mentioned the COVID bunnies, that put such a smile on my face.
Still alive. I don't know how, but they are.
And the fact that you're like, hey, you know what? Right before we started recording, I have to go feed my COVID bunnies. I love that. That was amazing. So, and shout out to your Salukis. Just a shout out to the fact that it doesn't matter where you go to college. The fact that Mike has worked at the coolest, biggest tech companies in the world. He is a CMO, and he went to Southern Illinois University. And look at him now; he is absolutely crushing it. So there
Well,
you go, people.
appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I've got a senior in high school, and the stress levels that these kids have, especially now, for where to apply to and what happens if they don't get in, to a top 30 school or whatever it might be. And they say, look, I know a whole collection of state school people and directional state school people, right? Like Southern Illinois, right? Or Northern Illinois, where these folks are doing incredible things, right? And so the days of setting your career based on where you go to college are just so that's such a dated concept.
Thank you for saying that. So,
Yeah.
Mike, let's kick this off. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about some of the mentors that have made a big impact on you throughout your career?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned I started my career in the agency world and happened to land a job, my first job out of grad school, working for this guy Rashad Tabakawala. Really long name, but I showed up. I remember the first day. He actually thought I was the new administrative assistant, which was just a funny misunderstanding. But yeah, worked at Starcom, and Rashad was just the best, right? I think obviously a functional expert in so many ways, but what I really learned from him is to play the long game, right? He did not get involved and entangled in short-term politics. He did not build transactional relationships. He was about fostering talent, fostering great, peer relationships, and then following, his curiosity, right? So even today, if you look at Rashad's writing, he's prolific. The guy has so many interests, and so I learned a lot from that, right? And the rest kind of handles itself. Christian Kugel was also a guy. Hopefully, many of your listeners know him. He was my first sort of solid line boss, and so I think what I learned from him is you can achieve great things, but also we spend a lot of time at the office. So please be sure to have fun. Don't take yourself too seriously, and that's not at all at odds with performance, right? So bring those two things together. Those were two
Uh,
good early ones. Yeah.
Thank you. Those are great. So Rashad has put out a fantastic newsletter and Sunday morning musings for years now.
Yeah.
And an author of several books and a prolific writer and speaker. So great
He's
call
great.
out. Um,
I went to work for him again at Viveki years later as well. Yeah, so
Amazing,
he
amazing.
has that draw with many people.
So With that said, in terms of just with that draw, so that leads us to our next question. In terms of power skills, or some people might call it soft skills, what soft skills or power skills do you find most crucial for success within your career that have gotten you to where you are today and that you like to instill in your people and your teams?
Uh, Point on curiosity is active listening, right? So many people start formulating their thoughts when the other person is talking, and I encourage people to just stop and like hold the space and actually lean in and listen. And there was an old boss of mine at Google who had a sticker on his laptop that said "Why to the third power," which really means listen to somebody, then ask why, listen to them some more, right? Peel that onion until you kind of find the goodness there. So I would say that's definitely one of them. Having an even keel. I think a lot of people can misconstrue that as a lack of passion at times, like, oh, like they're not super emotional about this. I don't think it's that at all. It's funny. I've been watching this show. My kids got me into this YouTube thing called Bondi Rescue, and it's all the lifeguards at Bondi Beach in Sydney, and they're constantly dealing with these crazy issues. And
Yeah,
I always think to myself, like, what would happen if they were completely panicking, during these situations? It's just not helpful to the situation. So I think maintaining an even keel is really critical. That extends to things like don't ever send the angry email or the angry.
never,
Like I
never.
learned that the hard way early in my career. So for any young person out there, wait till the next day, withhold it and then have the conversation. And then I think the last thing is just really model the socialization of failure, right? So, we're not going to get it right every time, as leaders. And, I learned from folks like Reed Hastings, who had a couple of really high profile mistakes, right? That he really did, sunshined in all the right ways. And we as leaders, at Netflix got to learn from that. And I think that gives you as much credibility as anything else does.
This is great. So the y squared or y cubed, was it y cubed? Yeah, y cubed. I love that one. That is fantastic. Additionally, how you said don't send that angry email. I would even say in this day and age, don't send that angry Slack because that can be just as impactful.
100%.
Take a
You
deep breath.
regret it 100% of the time, I promise you.
Uh, you're so right. I back that up 100%. With that, how do you track the impact of mentorship on your teams? When you think through how the advice that you're giving right now, how do you track the impact that you've made on your teams at Publicis, at Google, at Netflix, at Square, now at Life 360?
I think the direct link is probably a little too hard to measure. And I really think about it as a two-step process. I think step one is look, mentorship should create a lot of confidence and optimism, right? I have a coach, right, which is a flavor of mentorship. And,
Yep.
he is just so great at making me feel better about myself and the work, right? And I feel more confident and optimistic in what I'm doing. And that optimism and confidence then breeds the result, right? So that's kind of the second phase of the two-step process. And to me, that's what entrepreneurship is really about. And by entrepreneurship, I don't mean starting a business. I mean really having creativity and vision and doing important things in the workspace. And without optimism and confidence, you're just not going to have that irrational optimism that you need to succeed. So that's kind of what I look for is finger on the pulse of do people feel that confidence? Do they feel supported? Do they feel optimistic? And so that's how I try and kind of connect those dots.
All right, that's perfect. So, how do you make sure that your teams learn to accept failure? Because when you're in the earlier components of your career, even mid career, so many people in their 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, they still have issues understanding. You know what? I'm going to take that back. It doesn't matter about age. There's so many people that just get too caught up on not understanding or just being set back on failure. How do you help your teams with that when it comes to
Well,
confidence
I'll,
and
I'll say
picking them up?
it's sort of scientifically proven at this point that struggle is necessary in most cases for strong performance, right? That lots of studies on childhood struggle, and it can't be too much, right? There's a right amount of struggle that's necessary for that growth. Anecdotally, if you look at many of the great leaders in any given field, business, politics, etc., everything wasn't handed to them on a silver plate, right? They definitely overcame a lot of challenge, right? Plenty of that narrative to kind of go around. I think also knowing what doesn't work is critical to finding out what does. You
So
think
right.
about toddlers learning to walk or crawl, like same thing. Like you got to fall down, right? Or you got to run into something and fall down and then know not to do that again, right? So a lot of this is just sort of basic, to be honest. But I actually think, you know, if you look at Jeff Bezos and the quote he's had around, I think it's something like if the size of your failures isn't growing or getting bigger, you're not inventing at the right rate. And I think that's absolutely true. If you play it safe and you get a 10 out of 10 on everything, that's not super exciting. The way I extend that to my team in terms of performance management is, we do use OKRs, so objectives and key results. And if people come and have five that are kind of layup ish and they accomplish them all, they're not going to get promoted or get the best increase in their compensation. If they come with five very stretchy ones and they hit three of them, that's more the formula for success in my view.
Nice, nice. All right. So, Mike, if you were to leave us with a few words of wisdom for growing leaders, for people that are growing in terms of their marketing careers, their executive careers, or just people that are leaning in within the tech community that just want to learn and that are engaged with just understanding how to be better people, how to be better business people, and just better in their careers, what kind of guidance would you provide?
The first one I would say for new leaders is what I just mentioned, which is, when you're working with your folks, your team, empower them by stretching them. People don't want to come in and do safe, modestly decent work. People want to, self manifest kind of their best self, right? And so
Totally.
help them do that by making sure that they're influencing the goals that are being set for them and that they're stretchy enough. I think
Elasticity.
you have to stretch folks and they have to want to stretch as well.
Mhm.
The second is be yourself. This was in my post. I think a lot of people try and be the quote unquote marketing leader or the CMO or the whatever. Acting it doesn't feel good and it doesn't get you there, ironically, right? So just lean into who you are and see where it goes. And then I think, related to that is lean into your strengths. There's, the sort of discipline of CrossFit is a really interesting parallel. You have to be able to lift weights. You have to be able to, run really far or sprint or whatever it is. You can't be amazing at all of those things. And it's a waste of time for a skinny guy like me to try and be an amazing power lifter. So I'm going to lean into the running and the swimming and kind of everything else that's better matched with my talents. And so figure out what those are. Be aware of your non-strengths, but definitely spend a lot more time and energy sharpening and leveraging the strengths that you have.
I love that. That's why I lean in on the gift of gab and my keen listening skills for that exact reason.
There you
Mike,
go.
this has been fantastic. We really appreciate you hopping on the OhHello pod and being part of our community. Thank you. Kudos to all the great work that you're doing at Life360, and just thanks for being you. Thank you.
Great to reconnect. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care.